Okay, let's now move to existential instantiation. If you turn to page 451 of your book, that's where you have the first occurrence of existential instantiation. The example is number 52. All baseball players are athletes. Some baseball players take performance enhancing drugs, so some athletes take performance enhancing drugs. And he gives you that scheme of abbreviation. And then what you have is this. 1, EX, AX, 2, this, BX, dot DX. Pardon me. I hope you can see that. That glare. I wish I could handle it. Let me see if I can correct it here. I've kind of dealt with it a little, but not quite. To be sure, it's a glare from the light. Let me do that. And then you have, therefore, there's an X, AX dot DX. It's existential instantiation. It looks like the conclusion here, the last step will be existential generalization. So, how should we go about this? Let's begin with this line. Rule of thumb, always apply EI before UI. Here's why. You can always instantiate to any constant universally. You cannot do the same with an existential instantiation. And I'll demonstrate the logical intuitiveness of that in a moment. But let's instantiate to a constant here and say, he uses, what does he use? He uses B, B, B. So let's stick to that and say B, B dot D, B. I've replaced all occurrences of X uniformly, and so I have 2EI, existential instantiation. Same process as universal instantiation, only that I begin with this before I employ that. And then I can use universal instantiation and have Bx arrow Ax and say one universal instantiation. Always apply EI before apply UI. Pardon me. Let's see here. I think I did something wrong. I did not instantiate to a constant. B. Then I can now do some kind of simplification. 5 and have BB here and say 1, not 1, but 3 simplification. And then I have 6 AB. Then I can simplify 3. 7. So 6, 4, and 5. Sorry, how did I arrive at 6? I did not even tell you that. So let me tell you. 4, 5 mod exponents. That allows me to arrive at AB. Now simplify this. 3, and you have DB, and say 3 simplification. Having done that, I go to 7, 8. I combine AB and DB in some kind of conjunction and say 6, 7 conjunction. Having done that, I can now do existential generalization on 8, like that. AB dot DB and say 8 existential generalization. That G is not looking well. Now, I told you, always use EI before UI. In other words, what we are trying to avoid is the sort of fallacy that would entail the following. Let me use this section here. Something is a cow. And something is a fox. That's step 1. That's step 2. Let me symbolize it. There's an X, such that X is a cow. Or there's an X, such that X is a fox. Suppose I existentially instantiate 3 at step 5 to say CA and say 3 existential instantiation. And then I existentially instantiate that to A as well. So I have FA and say 4 existential instantiation. And then I do conjunction. I have CA dot FA 5, 6 conjunction. And let me call this some name, a name like Albert. Albert. Now, this one says, since I used C to designate cow, I'll say that Albert is a cow, and then something is a fox. It will say that Albert is a cow and Albert is a fox. Of course, that's false. So the rule is, do your best. If you have a letter that has already been existentially instantiated into in step 5, step 6, use a different letter. Use a different letter, so that here you might have Albert, and here if we had B, Brian, so that it'll be Albert is a cow and Brian is a fox, then you kind of avoid that kind of mistake. And that's why you are told, in order to avoid those sorts of fallacies, always use EI before UI and never instantiate to a constant that is already occurring earlier on in the proof. Okay, that's a lot to chew on at this time, but it should be something worth considering. All right, that's a little bit about existential instantiation. Read the text and look at the correct applications of EI. Again, the idea here is EI can only be applied to whole lines, cannot be applied to parts of lines.